Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am thrilled to be here and to have this conversation with some excellent panelists. My goal for today is really just to highlight the very different ways that career education can be incorporated into K-12. And how we can make that happen, and what's needed at a systems level in order to accomplish that in different ways. So I am joined today by Leilani Brown at K-12, by Noel Ginsberg at Careerwise Colorado and now USA, David Miyashiro from Cajon Valley Union School District, and Keon Price from the Brooklyn STEAM Center. And I'm going to start off by asking each of you to give your 60-second elevator pitch of how your career learning program works for students. And we'll go in that order. So Leilani.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Courtney, and to the panelists and to the audience. We're thrilled to be here and participating in ASU GSV. I like to think of our career readiness program and career education designed with three objectives, and that is exposure, exploration, and experience. And I think that that's a fair treatment as it relates to K-12 education. We accomplish our career education and deliver it with a few things in mind. First, obviously, career courses, which are industry recent and industry relevant. We want to make sure that we are really linking into business and industry when we develop that curriculum. We also very deliberately build in opportunities for students to skill build and also develop certifications, whether it be through our higher ed partners, our business and industry partners, and also through their CTSOs or their career technical student organizations. We believe in exposure directly to the business world, and so we partner with corporations and industry associations to ensure that they have opportunities for job shadowing and the like. We also believe in project-based learning because we think collaboration will be key, not only in the classroom, but also in life after high school. And it is a critical component to our program. And then finally, we also, through those techniques, deliver professional skills or essential skills, things like time management, conflict resolution, presentation skills, and the like, that we think are also part of our program. So it's a really comprehensive, intentionally designed program to ensure that students are workforce ready.
Noel, do you want to tell us about yours?
Sure. So Careerwise is a youth apprenticeship system that we're piloting here in Colorado and now a few other states around the country. And the way it works is in middle school, kids will begin to get the opportunity of career exploration so that in high school, in their 10th grade, they will have the option to choose an apprenticeship. Could be in banking, finance, insurance, a whole host of kind of modern day careers, as well as ultimately the skilled trades, which obviously have been strong in this country for a long time. So in the 11th grade, they'll spend 2 days a week in a classroom, in a business, 3 days a week in a classroom. And a lot of the work that will take place if they have strong CTE programs in that school will be apprenticeship aligned with the career path that they've chosen. In the second or senior year, they'll spend 3 days a week in a business, 2 days a week in the classroom. They will earn enough credits during those 2 years to get their high school diploma, as well as they'll be earning a credential within the sector that they are a part of. So if they're banking and finance, they can, through concurrent enrollment, take classes at our community college system to augment with related classes their apprenticeship. And then after the third year, they have the opportunity to be hired on by the company in which they started their apprenticeship with and spent the last 3 years. These apprenticeships are paid from the very first year. So over the 3-year period, they can earn up to around $40,000 cumulatively. So for young people, regardless of where they're coming from, that's meaningful dollars. But most importantly, they're getting professional experience in careers of their choice, competing with their contemporaries in school for those positions that are created through our apprenticeship marketplace. So Careerwise currently has affiliates now in New York City, Indianapolis, Washington, D.C. And we see this as an option multiplier for our students in that they're getting real life experience at the same time they're completing their education and building a bridge to their future.
Our program, very similar to Noel's and Leilani's, is very intentionally designed. It starts in kindergarten, but we designed it backwards from what adults do we want to produce. A lot of our education systems, at least in K-12, seem to be designed to get kids out. In California, we used to have what's called the high school exit exam. And I think politically people started to think about, that doesn't sound so good. You know, our job is not to get kids out, it's about getting them into something. And so our vision of happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment, which is on the top of our board dais. If we're successful, we'll have happy adults with self-esteem and self-awareness who have beautiful friendships and relationships with personal friends, but also colleagues and a network of people that can help them on their career, as well as their spouse or significant others. And then finally, gainful employment. Aside from relationships, career satisfaction is number 2 in terms of life satisfaction. So how do we intentionally design our K-12 system to produce that in our community? And to do that, we start in kindergarten and build the interest and foundational skills around students' awareness about their strengths, interests, and values. They explore careers starting in kindergarten, aligned with the ONET, the Government Database of Jobs. And then by middle school, they complete their FSAID and start the pre-FAFSA to start the personal finance and start to think about decision-making in terms of post-secondary opportunities before they even get into high school. And these conversations happens with parents. And then as they get more in tune with their career development opportunities, then they turn more into internships and work-based learning through their junior, sophomore, and freshman year. By senior year, ideally working on their post-secondary credentials while they're in high school.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So the Brooklyn STEAM Center is very similar to a lot of the models that's already been mentioned. But to really explain how it works, I really wanted to give a little bit of background as to why we were founded. So New York City is labeled the most segregated school district in the nation, which comes as a surprise to many, because as the largest school district in the nation and a city that is often coined as the melting pot, our school system is very segregated. And so the Brooklyn STEAM Center was founded out of the idea of socioeconomic integration, which is essentially bringing together scholars from across different districts here in New York City for the purpose of career and technical education. So we've kind of set out to really rethink public school and to reimagine where school can actually happen. And so we are located on the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is a 300-acre industrial park. Our school building is actually on the 3rd floor of one of the Navy Yard's biggest properties, a 1 million square foot high rise, which is home to over 100 companies. The Navy Yard itself is occupied by over 400 companies and over 20,000 employees. You can do everything here from operate the Mars rover or take a tour of the facility using a self-driving vehicle. So our program model is really designed to provide exposure to the different career opportunities a lot of our scholars are often locked out of. We are a shared instruction model, so students are coming to us from 8 different high schools for half a day in their 11th and 12th grade years. We offer a number of industry credentials across 5 different industry pathways here at the STEAM Center. We have a huge focus also on professional skills. So our scholars are able to earn badges along the way in different areas within the MHA professional skills framework. We have a mentality or a mantra of building with and not for. So our industry partners, our scholars, our families kind of inform the work that happens here. And we like to say that, you know, any scholar that graduates the STEAM Center will be well equipped for the world of work and beyond. Because one of the other interesting concepts beyond our model is to leverage the industry partners that are here on the Navy Yard as co-teachers to ensure any changes within these respective pathways are integrated into our curriculum. So prime example of that, Apple launched this new programming language recently called Swift. Wasn't a part of our computer science and information technology pathway originally, but given the feedback that we were hearing from our industry partners, we were able to bring one of them in as a co-teacher and integrate that into our curriculum. So it's a little bit about this. Thank you.
Thank you all. I think I'd love to hear your reflections as we're in this moment of reckoning around injustice in our society, uh, racism, inequity. How do you think about the role of career learning in the K-12 system in addressing that?
I'd be happy to weigh in on that. Like the rest of the country, we were all impacted by what we were seeing and becoming aware of in this country. And at CareerWise, we were founded on creating opportunity for young people, and we believe firmly that it was for all kids. But when we watched the murder of George Floyd, it shook us to our core, and we asked ourselves, are we doing enough? Is what we're doing truly leveling the playing field? And the answer that we came up with is we can do more. So we initiated, and it's a pilot stage right now, 2.5 months old, what we're calling an Equity First initiative, which is orienting for those employers that care about diversity, want to engage their future workforce and ensure that it's diverse. We're recruiting students in partnership with Denver Public Schools here, diverse students, Black and brown kids, that these companies will, they'll all compete for these positions, but once they are hired by these companies, we will have wraparound services available to the extent they're necessary. They may not be, but if they are, for the students. We'll provide equity training for the supervisors and coaches for our apprentices to ensure that at the end of the day, they will be equally successful as any of our other apprentices that may come from different circumstances that are less challenged. And I can tell you today, we had one of our graduated apprentices, Angenique, that spoke about her journey. She started with us 3 years ago. She is now a full-time employee at Pinnacle Assurance, earning a living wage in Colorado, which is greater than $45,000. And our whole team got to hear her virtually and her story and where she is today. And I firmly believe that the work that all of us are working on can truly change this country. Because what everyone wants in America and across this globe is a good job. And they need to have the skills to compete for those. And if they do, and if we have the best education system in the world, our people will compete, our industries will be successful. And I believe it starts with equity.
I would add a couple of things. Can you hear me better? I've got a text that I was not easily heard, and so I have a headset on now.
That's more clear.
Okay, great. So a couple of things I would add to what Noel was saying, which is spot on. Prior to COVID, McKinsey Consulting issued a report around the future of work, and they were talking about some of the talent gaps and skills gaps that existed in every single industry and what the impacts were. And that this ongoing future of work impact around innovation, emerging technology, and the skills gaps was going to disproportionately affect a number of different groups. People over 50, people in rural areas, and also African Americans and Latinx people. And to the tune of 11.5 million people being shut out of the workforce. And the intersectionality of that is really, really daunting. It's not because they are not skilled, but they're skilled in what we would consider middle skilled or lower skilled jobs, not necessarily connecting them to opportunities for higher skilled and ultimately higher wage earning careers and professions, and those that have a longer, well-paying career trajectory. So I think that it is about connecting talent, Black and brown talent, to opportunities and providing that networking opportunity for them as well. So exposing them to the jobs that exist that are new, not the jobs that are going away, okay? But also connecting them to those opportunities. We do partner with an organization, a company called Tallo, Tallo, that does that very thing. They have over 1 million participants on the platform, connecting them to college and career opportunities. And I was excited to learn that 250 of those talent seekers are African American or Black identified. And that is really, really critical. So when you look at these companies that are putting out statements around Black Lives Matter and equal participation and how do we combat racism, there are tools that exist like Tallo and others that will connect opportunities to people who are traditionally marginalized or underrepresented or otherwise disenfranchised.
I love that you said opportunities. We believe that equity in our community is closing the opportunity gap as well. And we're fortunate in Cajon Valley to be beautifully diverse. We have over 40 languages spoken here, the largest Middle Eastern refugee population in the country, which is mostly Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, but also lots of refugee camps all around the Middle East where our kids come from. Many not even having any formal school when they come start with us in middle school, but also 13% African American, 20% Latino, and 20% Caucasian. It's a very diverse mix. And so starting in kindergarten, part of the world of work curriculum is social emotional learning and relationship skills. So our students start learning to give TED Talks starting in kindergarten. And the first TED Talks they give are just telling their story. Who are they? And what do they like to do? Really starting really easy, building into more complex themes as they grow older into middle school. But we've seen that as kids know each other and themselves well and deeply, then bias isn't something we have to deal with in middle school because they learn to love their peers and neighbors and build healthy relationships in primary school. And so by design, we build relationships and teach kids that if you want to have a meaningful career, social emotional learning will get you hired and it'll also get you fired. So there are some interpersonal skills and working with diverse people that will help you along this pathway if you know your neighbor deeply and well.
I keep having to remind myself to take myself off mute. So a huge part of the work at the STEAM Center is building social capital. And I personally think there's no better place to do that outside of this really awesome industry environment. And for us, what that means is ensuring that our scholars are provided with adequate networking opportunities with the business partners here on the Navy Yard. So we're doing everything from job shadowing. We have employers coming in to judge competitions as guest speakers, as adjunct lecturers. We have a number of worksite tours, networking events. We're teaching our scholars how to do elevator pitches. Literally, I was talking to Courtney during our pre-session just about the fact that our scholars needed to narrow down their pitch to 30 seconds because that's how long it would take them on the ride on the elevators from downstairs in the lobby up to the third floor where we're located. So for us, it's ensuring that they have these opportunities. The other thing that we really aim to do is ensure that our scholars are connected to the opportunities that are emerging once these entrepreneurs, inventors, and disruptors launch into a larger scale business environment. Oftentimes when entrepreneurs make it, they usually tap into their Ivy League alumni networks. And so having our students at the forefront of the opportunities here on the Navy Yard and ensuring that they're considered for these opportunities when they are created is a core part of our model and our work here.
There's something I might add to what, Cam, you just said. And we're talking about this in large degree from the perspective of the education and the young person, which is critically, obviously that's why we're here. But the reality of it is, this is as much about industry recognizing their role. My frustration, I've been in business now for 40 years in my own manufacturing company. And what I found after getting involved 30 years ago with our schools is the missing piece was business. They viewed their role was to be an advisor, a consultant, or frankly, a critic. What I've seen in other countries like Germany and Switzerland is they play a central role in education. And in so doing, they're providing incredible opportunities for young people at scale. 70% of the Swiss population goes through an apprenticeship. But equally important, because it drives it to scale, is that industry has a workforce that is competitive globally. And so what we're really doing by doing good for these young people is doing good for our business and our industry and our country. And I think we can't let industry off the hook, and I can say that because I represent industry. But we have a role.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
that point. And I think it's an important one. I'd love to hear from others of you thoughts around both the role of industry in the work that you're doing, as well as just other systems levers that have been necessary in order to be successful in incorporating this career learning for your students?
Go ahead, Leilani.
No, it's just, thank you, David. I was first going to offer that we sort of start to look at the workplace being our new classroom, or exposure at least to that. And I don't think that we should think that an online environment, or even the online environment that we all find ourselves in right now, is prevents that from happening. You can have workplace and job exposure virtually, and actually do that in a way that reduces the operational lift on the part of the business. Let me give you an example of that. Last year in 2019, we piloted a job shadowing program through Job Shadow Week. It was a K-12 sponsored program that exposed in 2 pilot cities, somewhere in the area of 25 students in each place, to the workplace. And in that way, we were able to give them exposure to real industry professionals, the world of work, how it worked. They got to take tours and ask questions, etc. This year, in the wake of COVID-19, we moved our program online and made it completely virtual. We went from 50 students, or 50 or 100 students in 2019, to over 3,500 students around the world. We were encouraged, but also really surprised that we had students dialing in at night from India, craving and seeking this interaction with students. At the same time, we were very encouraged by the partner participation, somewhere in the area of 17 to 18 partners that presented to these students and interacted with them. And there's an appetite on behalf of the partners as well. So it's a critical part of our learning experience, and we're trying to design that into the practice. We also use, very credibly, our curriculum relies very much on the business and industry advice that we give, so that's industry recent and industry relevant. So I think that we should look for the silver linings, for example, coming out of COVID-19, to broaden exposure and move beyond geographic boundaries and other boundaries that otherwise prevent young people from connecting to these opportunities. I would just offer you one last notion, that the student in the middle of New York City can have equal access to exposure to a career in agribusiness than the student in Gary, Indiana might have access to a career in Silicon Valley. And I think that that is amazing.
I would also add, in the height of the pandemic in Colorado, 68% of our apprentices remained at work for essential businesses or remotely for those that were working remotely. And it really speaks to the fact that these young people, they weren't interns. They were actually part of the work stream, and why you can't do it remotely. And I think we have a real opportunity to learn from the last 7 months in terms of what's possible.
I began my career as a teacher and really didn't get exposed to the politics or the accountability pressures until I became a school principal. And that was in the early days of No Child Left Behind, where I believed my job was to raise test scores, and that's it. Care about kids second. At least that was the direction given to me. So I became the New England Patriots of standardized testing, back in the Tom Brady days. And it just killed it.
By the way, David, I don't even know if that's good or bad. But
It's all about perspective, Leilani. But
we're talking inflate gate.
They actually called me a turnaround principal, meaning I could take a low performing school based on test scores in a matter of a couple of years, get it off the state list, and get it into high status with students being proficient or advanced. These kids would still leave our system and go into generational gangs and get pregnant in high school, not go on to four-year university. So we changed one point in time in their academic career, but we didn't change the outcomes. And then in the next phase of my career as an assistant superintendent, led a technology revolution, bringing one-to-one devices into 2 different districts, but really just doing the same game of education more efficiently and higher tech. And then when I came to El Cajon, the board wanted me to get out into the community so that we had a footprint and a role in the community. The first meeting was with the city manager, and asked him, you oversee the police department, the fire department, city works, public works. If the school district was yours, what would you have us do? And he said, you're not going to like what I have to say, but you guys are stigmatizing labor. You're stigmatizing the Department of Defense. Nobody wants to come into law enforcement or firefighting. They see it as a fallback. And the most important jobs in East County, including developers and architectures and the people that are building our infrastructure, don't have a talent pool. And we have 16 to 24-year-olds called opportunity youth that are not working and not in school. They said the school system is failing the community, but I would say that that's clear across the country. And that feedback was hard. And it caused us to really have a conversation with our school board to say, we can focus on these test scores, we can focus on these things, or we could start listening to the people that we're actually serving in terms of our Chamber of Commerce, Department of Defense, all the people that actually would provide an opportunity for our kids. And they were a large part of the design into the World of Work curriculum and career exposures so that we don't stigmatize any aspect of the workforce that may not require a four-year degree, at least to begin with. Could be a credential, a certification, or an academy, or something different, giving kids all options on the table.
David, what you just said is so important. In this country, we've been telling our parents for generations and our students that there's only one path in this country of opportunity, and that's through a four-year degree. It's not true. Now, I wouldn't tell you don't get one. The reality is there are many ways to find success in our world, and if we continue to beat that drum, we're telling kids that have this incredible talent that they're not worth as much, and that's just not right. And I may be the only one on this panel, but I don't have a four-year degree, and I've built a business and now built a nonprofit. It isn't the only defining issue. And I will tell you quickly, the CEO of Pinnacle Assurance, 600 employees. Before we had started our program, I asked him if he would consider apprentices. He said, probably only one, because you have to have a college degree to work in our company. And I said, why? To his credit, he thought for a minute and said, I have no clue. He now has 5% of his workforce, over 30 students as apprentices. It should not be the only credential. It should be one of the credentials.
And companies are eliminating the requirement,
Right.
increasingly. Increasing number of companies are eliminating the requirement and also doing audits of their performance descriptions and role descriptions to make sure that what they are advertising is or promoting or recruiting for is actually applicable to the job. And that is the next dimension, quite frankly, of inclusion when we start talking about inclusion initiatives at our companies.
Yeah, in California, and most states have the same opportunity. If a student completes their FSAID and FAFSA, then the first 2 years of community college in any California junior college are free. And most people don't know that. It's like the hidden secret in California that parents don't know these things. So by giving the kids those opportunities and saying that this could be applied for trade school and other things too, FAFSA covers more than just community college. And then you have your first 2 years in the bank, and then you too can start on third base, just like your affluent colleagues, and then decide upon a four-year university, but based on your career aspiration, knowing that you need that degree and that credential to get this job. Very intentional.
In fact, when you talk about systems change, in Colorado this year, we supported the passage of a bill that makes credit for prior learning possible, both for an apprentice. So they can essentially, when this is complete, they'll earn college credit for the time spent in a workplace, making college more affordable if that's their path, or if they want to get it.
Can you talk a little bit about, since we had a little break there, can you talk a little bit about how the role of students learning about careers is actually connecting to their academic curriculum and how they're receiving credit for that? I think that's one part that can sometimes be confusing for for K-12 systems, districts that have not tried to incorporate any of this, how the two tie together.
Who do you want to answer that?
Anybody.
I'll take a stab on it. It's essentially, when we first went to learn about this overseas, the head of curriculum for Denver Public Schools, Susanna Cordova, was with us. And I thought the biggest obstacle to credit for prior learning within high school would be that we couldn't get it done, or that they wouldn't be able to get enough credit to graduate. And Susanna, to her credit as a visionary, she said, I can make that happen. And that's now happened with 17 school districts across the state, and now multiple school districts across this country. And so what they started with is credit that was elective, giving them credit for that. And now working on getting more substantive classes, let's say it's algebra. If you're going to become an engineer or an automation technician, then algebra or CAD will be very important. And so that credit, if you learn those skills within the workplace, will apply. So that's one of the ways that we've addressed it.
I got stuck on that question, Courtney. We actually develop different metrics and are using different tools to measure success and efficacy of our program. So at the center of that are Gallup student engagement survey, the Gallup student engagement poll, which peaks at 5th grade in terms of student engagement and bottoms out at 12th grade in terms of students' belief that education actually matters towards their future. But it also measures hope and entrepreneurial skills created attached to personal finance. So if we start to measure those things in the classroom, then they become things that teachers will do in their classrooms. So that and the possible selves data that we're doing with the University of San Diego, where as students develop self-awareness and career awareness and start to see pathways based on who they are and who they might want to become, to see that data crystallize, that's getting the return on investment that we want in the career development experiences. And as teachers integrate them with the content, that just makes it 10 times more relevant for the students. But we have to look at different metrics because, yeah, not every district's using Gallup or a possible future selves, or I've completed my FSAID and FAFSA by eighth grade. These are things that as they become part of policy and state accountability measures, we can actually start to see the needle move in terms of the outcomes for our young people.
Yeah, and Courtney, I don't want to oversimplify my response. I'm not as close to the pedagogy and the technical aspects of credit seeking or credit granting, but I will say that our programs are tuition-free online public schools. And so it's a high school curriculum plus career courses. They're authorized in most cases at the state level and provided and administered by K-12. In other instances, we supplement public school districts with our curriculum to provide the same thing. So this is a high school curriculum. This is an accepted and approved high school track towards a high school diploma and beyond.
There are a few different ways in which we do that as well. Thank you for raising that, Leilani. So we are a New York City public high school. We award up to 16 credits for our program, which meets and fulfills the elective credit requirements for high school graduation here in New York City. All our programs are state approved. So the New York State Education Department has reviewed our curriculum and awarded an endorsement. All our instructors are licensed pedagogues through the State Education Department as well. Another way in which we're looking at this work is to try to award integrated academic credits through our career and technical education programs. An example of that may be geometry and construction, or thinking about awarding ELA or literacy credits through our film and media pathway. The policy lever is really the thing that we really need to figure out how to maneuver at this point, because our state education department doesn't necessarily or have always embraced that kind of outside the box thinking. So it's something that we're actively pursuing at this point. I know it happens in other states and other districts, but for a very long time here in New York City, that hasn't been a possibility for our public school students.
I want to add to that, as Keon said, and I also build on something that Noel said earlier. I really think about this as a triangulated relationship that really combines education, business and industry, and legislators. It's really important. And we see nonpartisan, I don't even want to say bipartisan, we see nonpartisan support for career and technical education because it is about retaining talent and promoting talent and growing and cultivating talent in your states and in your local economies, therefore making the economy more vibrant, making companies more profitable, and having the talent stay. So education, legislation, and business and industry have become and should always have been inextricably linked in order to make this work.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Well said. One of the things I want to also add is the industry credentials that our scholars are able to walk away from our programs with has often led to college credits. We had quite a few students have earned upwards of 16 college credits in aligned majors as a result of the industry credentials that they've been able to obtain through their program here at the STEAM Center.
Thank you for both of those reflections. I think that the importance around getting aligned policy and getting business involved just can't be overstated as we look at how we move our K-12 education system forward and get better, more equitable outcomes for all of our students. I'd love to hear reflection from anyone, maybe Kaon first, just on how you've seen students explore pathways and think about what their future might look like through these types of programs.
Sure. So a lot of times what we've heard from our scholars is that they've never thought about the career opportunities that we've exposed them to as a result of just not having the access to even know that they exist. So, you know, through our partnerships and the over 300 companies that are here on the Brooklyn Navy Yard, a lot of our young people are starting to see themselves in different career opportunities that they didn't know existed prior to coming here. And for me, that's just been an awakening. It lets us know that we need to, as a system, do a better job at exposing our young people at an earlier stage.
I'd like to answer that question with the who. One of my favorite quotes is from John Adams. He said there ought to be two educations, one to teach us how to live and the other how to make a living. And I don't think we as a system do that very well yet on both fronts. But by starting with the teachers, starting from kindergarten teachers all the way up through high school in K-12, they don't believe it's their job necessarily to be the human development and career development mentor for the students, particularly in primary school. We've changed their role to that and said the world of work is not an add-on, it is the thing, and we're going to integrate content, mathematics, and reading around it and engage the parents at the one point in time where they're closest to the school. By the time middle school comes, parents sometimes don't show up all the time to parent-teacher night, but in elementary school, parents are still somewhat engaged. Mm-hmm. So we bring in and have parent-teacher, two-generation conversations about these careers. Hey, did you notice that this year, the two careers that Leilani really gravitated to are in investigative and sciences side? She really likes problem solving and math and science and seems to be very interested in research. And the parents lean in. That's not my average parent-teacher conference. Usually we talk about what my child is deficient in, but instead we're talking about interest and career exposures. And the more we can help the children and the parents see a brighter future, and then the curriculum builds into those actual steps of decision-making and making financial decisions on investments to post-secondary, we think that the who is just as important. Starting with the teacher, central job is career development and human development, how to live and how to make a living.
Awesome. Love that.
So we have 5 minutes left, and I'd like to just ask each of you for final reflection. What is your message, knowing that our ASU GSV Summit audience is composed of basically the entire spectrum? We've got the educators, the systems leaders, the policymakers, the grant makers, the businesses, post-secondary. We have everyone. So what's your final message? What do you think is most important? Noel, you first.
From my perspective, we've got to stop thinking about great programs and start building great systems. And in this model with CTE and with work-based learning, industry is an important partner there, and they need to carry their role. And for those of us coming from that perspective, that's our job to help make happen. But we have a country of a lot of great initiatives and programs. Until we create a fabric that looks like a system so that all kids, regardless of their zip code, where they come from, their ethnicity, they all have equal opportunity for a future career, we really won't have done our job. So I think if there's a message that I would leave is, don't let business off the hook. They have a responsibility and they should play their role. Second, we have to build upon all the good work that we're doing in building a system that leads to options for young people as well as adults, because the young people we're working with today someday may go through another pandemic and their career may have evaporated and they need to be replaced. We need a system that will support them, not just K-12 level, but throughout their lifetime. I believe apprenticeship, work-based learning is the foundational component, but it's not the whole thing. So let's build a system together to move education performance to be a great opportunity in the kind of country that globally, where everyone can earn a living wage.
Well, for the K-12 people out there, what I would want everyone to take as a call to action or to leave with is, for the first time in my career, I really deeply understand and got to know our parent community, even more so than when I was a teacher, which is a little bit shameful. But we've gotten to know our parents on a deep level during this crisis. And when in school communities where the schools are not an option, where they're closed, parents are finding hacks and solutions. They're opting to K-12, they're opting to private and charter schools, and they're forming learning hubs. They're figuring it out on their own. And so what we've changed is our language is the students are our treasures, but our parents, you are our clients. And so for school districts and universities out there, treasure the students, but serve the family. Reach to the parent and help them understand the system so that they can also be a partner in helping the young people navigate this with the educators.
So I just want to end by sharing, again, our mantra, and that's building with and not for. I think for far too long, workforce development, business, our legislators, and education have been completely disconnected. And I want to encourage and echo what Ilalani shared earlier about bringing them together and ensuring that they redesign our educational system with a more equitable solution for all young people.
So with that, I mean, I'm adding to the wonderful comments by my colleagues on the panel. I want to point out something obvious but important. And that is, and I'm focusing on high school, but that is that the high school education of today hasn't changed much in the last 30 to 40 years. And it certainly hasn't changed with the rate of change of business and industry. And so we have an urgent need to address that. And doing that has to be not evolutionary and iterative, but revolutionary. And I think offering it online or some hybrid of online and in-person education, which we believe in at K-12, is exponentially better because it provides access and opportunities and equity to young people beyond geographic and other boundaries. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you
That was a good
all.
mic drop. That was good.
We're done. Thank you all so much. It's wonderful as a moderator when you don't have to do much because your panelists just have a great conversation. So thank you all for the time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Nice to meet you guys.
Likewise. Have a great one. Really appreciate your comments.
You too.